Quick reminder, everybody, we are doing our first Grim Twitch stream for September 15th, which is a Sunday at 2 p.m. MST. We will be going live on Twitch, so stay tuned.
And make sure you follow us on twitch.tv/thegrimcurriculum. Thanks.
Alrighty.
This might be horrifically inappropriate, but I want to talk about something fun I did.
Hey, it's our podcast. We can talk about that.
You're right. So a few weeks ago, I talked about wanting to shoot guns.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And Steve took me.
Ooh.
And so this is going to sound silly, but I had this theory in my head. There's something I was like, I'm going to be really good at this. I just had this like feeling in my soul, like it makes no sense, but I was like, you've played a lot of video games. You're really good at that in the games. You're going to be good at it in real life. And I was awesome.
I freaking love that for you.
It's one of my favorite things I've done in a really long time. I know some of you may not be gun nuts, so to speak, but I can't wait to do it again. Steve and I went, and he was even really impressed because he's been doing it forever. And I was just like hitting the target. The first few, I was just like, wow, wow. And then after that, I was just like, yeah, no, it was so much fun.
I mean, I grew up around firearms. I grew up in the country. Mm-hmm. My parents were both military, et cetera, et cetera. So like, I'm fairly comfortable with them. But the one thing I will say is I'm more comfortable with like long guns, that being like rifles and shotguns.
Yeah.
Because we usually used to do just like target practice and stuff like that. But I have been to the range with friends with handguns. Mm-hmm. And the crazy part about those, they scare me a little because it's so easy and it's so much fun.
It's so much fun. I was like, should I be worried that I'm enjoying this so much? And then I was like, no, I think I just found the best stress relief ever.
I mean, target practice is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It is very cathartic, I feel like, but you have to just have that little voice in the back of your mind that's like, this is not a toy.
Exactly.
Because I think that's what a lot of people forget. It's like, it's so easy. You're usually using it in a controlled environment. Yep. It's very easy to get carried away and not realize like, hey, this could do a lot of damage pointed in the wrong direction. Absolutely. But yeah, I love that for you, though.
Thank you. I wanted to share because
Annie Oakley over here.
Right? I can't wait to do it again. I was just like, I feel like I could be in the Olympics.
Hey, who knows? This could be a new passion for you.
Honestly, I could have like just discovered something within myself.
And who knows? You could represent one of two countries.
Right? Exactly. They're going to fight over me.
Yeah, absolutely. They will. The next biathlon gold Olympist.
I'm in.
I don't know if you can cross-country ski or not, but
I can learn.
We've been in Canada long enough.
Right, I'll figure it out.
All right.
Shall we get this party started?
Yeah, let's get into Miss Jodi Arias part 3.
All right, let's do it.
All right, hello, everyone. I am Charlotte.
And I'm Dina. Welcome to the Grim Curriculum.
So we have made it to the conclusion of our Jodi Arias series.
I noticed something really interesting this time around.
Oh, do tell.
So we don't normally cover super recent cases, and we don't normally cover very well-known cases. Mm-hmm. I have never seen so many people reach out to us before the series was over to tell us how much they hate someone. This woman is, yes, we talked about it. She does have fans out there, but this is, I would say, one of the most universally hated people that we have ever covered. It blew my mind because so many people, I was even talking to people who like, you know, they casually listen or they may not even listen to the podcast. And I was like, oh, yeah, we're covering Jodi Arias. And they're like, that fucking bitch.
That seems to be the general consensus.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you know what? I'd have to agree 100% on that front. She's a nasty, nasty woman.
She definitely is. We finished last week's episode off by talking about the brutal slaying of Travis Alexander by the hands of his on-again, off-again girlfriend, Jodi Arias.
Jodi had done her best to set up an alibi and was on her way to Salt Lake City, but not before she spent some time rearranging the crime scene and throwing various items into the washing machine, including her digital camera.
While Jodi was in Mesa, she had her phone turned off. Therefore, we're not quite sure where she went immediately after she killed Travis. It's likely that she spent a fair bit of time hiding the murder weapons, which would ultimately never be found.
Approximately 6 hours after the murder, Jodi turned her phone back on. She then called Travis's phone and left him a voicemail, which would be later played at her trial. We're going to play that for you now.
I know Leslie called you, so I already talked to her, so you can call her back if you want, but it's not necessary. My phone died, so I wasn't getting back to anybody. And what else? Oh, and I drove 100 miles in the wrong direction, over 100 miles, thank you very much. So yeah, remember New Mexico? It was a lot like that, only you were here to prevent me from going into the 3 digits, so fun. Tell you all about that later. Also, we were talking about, when we were talking about your upcoming travels my way, I was looking at the May calendar, so I'm all confused. But Heather and I are going to see Othello on July 1st, and we would love for you to accompany us. I don't know when Team Freedom's event is, though, but, it's on the list, so we could do Shakespeare, Crater Lake, and the coast. So if you can make it. If not, we'll just do the coast in Crater Lake. But let me know, and I will talk to you soon. Bye. End of message.
You sneaky bitch. You thought that you could set up your own alibi by calling and leaving a voicemail. And we're thinking of going to see Othello. Okay, girl.
I was looking at the May calendar, not June. Silly me.
Silly me. I drove 150 miles in the wrong direction.
She just brutally murdered him.
That's wild. I guess, mask she's able to put on immediately. Or maybe she's not masking at all. Maybe that's the true evil just like showing right through, because she clearly doesn't give two shits.
That's going to be a big theme throughout today's episode, because to me, this says so much about her. Because someone with remorse is not going to do something like this. I'm directionally challenged. I can't say that I have ever driven 100 miles, 150 kilometers in the wrong direction. Like, that's ridiculous to even claim that. Like, what are you talking about?
The only thing I can think of is that she thought anybody listening to it after in an investigation, because she knew he would be found eventually, obviously. Yeah. She's not so stupid to think that he's just going to sit in that bathtub forever and just no one's going to say anything. He had roommates, and that'll kind of come into play in a bit. But are you just trying to be like, oh, silly me? And to have anyone listening be like, oh, so like, that's why she was on the road for so long. You know what I mean? She's lying to kind of throw off the story.
Well, she's thinking people are going to be like, she couldn't have done anything. Exactly. Why else would she leave him a voicemail? That just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I don't know about that. It seems pretty freaking obvious to me.
And remember that Ryan Burns at this point is still expecting her to come to his house. She was almost a day late for their meeting. So he's starting to wonder, like, where the hell is Jodi?
She did call him shortly after she left Travis's message and left him a similar one with the whole, my phone died, I drove the wrong direction story. He didn't seem to question it much, though.
Travis's roommates were under the impression that he had gone to Cancun. One of them arrived home and was surprised to see his car in the garage, but didn't assume that anything was wrong. It would be days before his body was discovered.
At first, when I heard that like his roommate like didn't question that his car was there, I was like, that's kind of strange. But then again, it's like maybe he got a taxi to the airport, right? Or maybe he got a different friend to drop him off. Like, really not that strange.
The other thing too was that I guess Travis, like, he lived in a really safe neighborhood, so he would leave his door unlocked all the time.
Oh.
And when the roommate came home, the door was locked, and he was like, well, that's kind of weird. Travis doesn't usually lock the door, so he had to go in through the garage, and that's where he saw the vehicle. So it was kind of these two things where he's like, this isn't too normal, but he didn't really like question it.
Yeah, this isn't the routine, but it's not so crazy. He was also scheduled to speak at a prepaid conference call the day after his death. When it came and went, those involved were surprised that he hadn't attended it. But like the roommate, they didn't think anything was wrong, and therefore no one went to check on him physically.
One of the people that thought that he was going to be at this conference call also was like, he was leaving him text messages, and he was like, dude, you missed it. This was really important. And Travis wasn't replying, and he was like, you better be dead.
Oh, man. Because Travis, I mean, say what you will about them, they were kind of maybe still known as kind of an MLM sort of situation.
Yeah.
But Travis was really good at it.
He was a big deal in this community.
And so for him to just blow something off like this, that was pretty strange. Like, that would have been very much out of character for him.
When Jodi arrived at Ryan's apartment, he was surprised to see that she looked a little different. Her once blonde hair was dyed a dark brown. She also had numerous bandages and small cuts on her arms and hands.
When Ryan asked her what happened, she told him she got them from working her restaurant job. In reality, these wounds were from Travis fighting back, which I mentioned that often in vicious, vicious stabbings like this, where you're talking not one or two wounds, you're talking
Mhm.
many, many wounds, in the frenzy of it all, with two humans fighting against each other, very often your attacker cuts themselves, and often pretty deeply as
Yeah.
well. And they may not realize that it's happened because there's so much blood everywhere
Yeah.
until after the fact. And obviously, that's exactly what's happened with Jodi here.
Other than all of that, everything seemed normal. The two hung out and had sex.
I can't. You know what? I listen to myself a lot when I edit these episodes.
Mhm.
I say I can't imagine a lot, which is starting to get on my nerve, and I'm trying not to say it as much. So sorry, guys. But can you imagine finding out as Ryan afterwards, like at the trial, at
Mhm.
all this, finding out that she had come and you had slept with her literally 24 hours after she had brutally murdered her other lover?
Yeah. Like, holy crap. And the thing is, no one is questioning her because no
No.
one suspects that little Jodi is capable of anything like that. So he's like, oh, your hair looks different. Okay. Oh, you're 24 hours late. Okay. Oh, you're covered in cuts. All right.
Yeah, she was good at acting relatively normal. At one point, while she was driving to Ryan's, a cop pulled her over because her license plate was upside down. She gave him no indication that anything was even remotely wrong. They do say, if you're committing a crime,
Mhm.
do not commit another crime because it'll be the smaller of the crimes that gets you caught. But even still, she managed to just get away.
She literally told them that a bunch of teenagers at Starbucks had pranked her.
I mean, that's a pretty believable story. I mean, in Edmonton, people straight up get their license plates stolen all the
That's
time.
true.
So,
That's
like,
true. Like we mentioned before, her and Ryan had made plans to attend a prepaid legal conference together. She fully expected Travis's body to be discovered during this time. It was not. She acted as if he was alive and even told a friend of theirs how much she cared for him as a friend.
after the conference, she went to her parents' house and told them that she was likely leaving town in the near future. When they inquired as to why, she told them that she was, quote unquote, likely going to be blamed for something.
They asked her what she meant by this, and she wouldn't tell them. And here's something interesting. She wears this mask around everybody where she's like, oh, Travis, I don't know. Like, oh, where's Travis? Blah, blah,
Hmm.
blah. And then when her parents are like, what's going on? She's like, I don't fucking know. They're going to put me away. Like, there's no mask whatsoever with the parents. She is completely different around them. And I find that fascinating because she upholds this facade. But when it comes to her parents,
She
she's
doesn't give a
she's
shit.
literally like, someone's going to come after me.
I mean, I guess in their defense, they were pretty used to this at that point. So, as we said, she was the kind of person who kept a lot of secrets from her parents, and her being sort of cryptic and acting mysterious was pretty on par for her.
Jodi continued to text and call Travis's phone. She acted as if she was worried that he wasn't answering her back. During one of these texts, she threatened to sleep in his bed while he was supposedly in Cancun.
We're getting a little too close to the mark, Jodi. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I hate to offer advice to a vicious murderer at any point, but are you stupid? Like, you're getting too close.
Yeah, she was literally like, oh, I understand that you went on this trip by yourself. You needed some you time. Like, wouldn't it be funny if you came back and I was just sleeping in your bed?
Meanwhile, she's literally been doing this all along,
Yeah.
climbing through his frickin' doggy door. During all of this, Travis's roommates did begin to notice that something smelled a little off, but they still did not investigate his room. Boys will be boys, I
I
guess.
was like, well, whatever.
Just didn't do his laundry.
It would eventually be Mimi, who we talked about last week, who put the gears into motion when it came to finally finding his body. Like many of his friends, she had tried to contact him and was beginning to grow worried.
Mimi was originally supposed to go to Mexico with Travis and was under the impression that he had gone alone because, in her mind, he had essentially ghosted her right before the trip. She called a mutual friend of theirs and asked her and her boyfriend to go with her to go to Travis's house and see if he was okay.
Dear listeners, this was a total of 5 days after the murder.
And his roommates were in the house with him for 5 days before anyone looked in his room.
Zach, one of the roommates, was watching a movie when they arrived. They asked where Travis was, and he explained that he thought he was in Cancun.
Now, you may be thinking to yourselves, how did they not notice the smell? Like, we've said it's stinky, but like, the smell.
Yeah.
Well, when the trio arrived at the house, they immediately thought something was wrong due to the permeating stench coming from his room.
The roommates would later say they thought the smell was either old food or, like you just hinted at, dirty clothes.
Zach got the key to the room and went in. He opened the door and saw a trail of blood. He followed it to the shower, and there he saw the dead body of Travis Alexander.
Investigators would later describe the state of his body as mummified. He was stuffed in the shower. We mentioned that Jodi had tried to clean the scene up. Despite that, it was obvious that something terrible had happened.
If you've seen the crime scene photos,
Oh.
there's blood everywhere. There was blood on the mirror, the sink, and even the blinds. Meanwhile, Travis's body had clearly been cleaned up. There were no signs of forced entry anywhere. It was very obvious that someone had tried to clean this up. Police were immediately called. Detective Esteban Flores arrived just before midnight and was joined by Deputy Attorney Juan Martinez shortly after.
Travis's body was removed from the scene. Various hair samples and fingerprints were taken. They also found a .25 caliber casing. And one thing that they also saw was a very small handprint, bloody full handprint on the mirror.
Girl. Finding the .25 caliber casing confused them initially because at first glance, it didn't look like Travis had even been shot.
No, you just saw stab wounds when you looked at him.
And she had stabbed him viciously in the back of the head, going as far to chunk bone away from his skull.
Which, the force that it takes to do that.
It's not easy.
No, absolutely not. Investigators made their way to the laundry room where they opened the washing machine and saw what Jodi had left. There was a combination of washed towels and sheets in the machine. As they dug deeper, they found a digital camera. It was clearly waterlogged, so they sent it out to see if they could recover the images that were on it.
Investigators also began calling his friends in an attempt to find a suspect. They asked if they knew of anyone who would hurt him. Each of them brought up the same name, Jodi Arias.
One of them actually called Jodi to tell her the news. She acted shocked, of course, but what she did afterwards really paints a picture of the lengths that she would go in order to be seen as a victim and not a suspect.
She essentially called their entire circle of friends in tears, saying that she had just found out that Travis had died. A small group of friends got a call from her during the same time they were telling police that she could be his killer.
Can you imagine? They're all sitting there in a circle talking to police, being like, it's Jodi, it's Jodi. And then Jodi calls and she's like, I can't believe Travis is dead.
And they're probably like, Beetlejuice.
Oh my God, seriously.
We summoned her.
Jodi even called the Mesa PD in order to talk to Esteban Flores. When she finally got through to him, she told him that she was a good friend of Travis's and that she wanted to help. Jodi told Flores that they had dated, but they were on good terms. She also claimed that the two of them hadn't seen each other since April.
We see this with a lot of, more so, I think, serial killers, but oftentimes, as you'll see in all the crime shows, and there is a spark of truth to it, the killer immerses themselves in the investigation.
Yes.
And they try to make themselves appear as helpful and as innocent as possible, and very rarely does it work out for them.
I think that speaks to her narcissism in a lot of ways,
Yes.
because she committed this horrible crime, and rather than like go on the run and hide and make it not be seen to police at all, she's inserting herself in this so that it's still somewhat about her.
Oh, 100%. That's exactly what it is. When he asked what had happened between them, Jodi simply said that she had broken up with him. This was very different than the story they got from his friends, who all said he broke up with her because of her obsessive behavior.
Jodi told Flores that she had spoken on the phone with Travis the Monday before his death. She specified that she didn't tell him this, but that she had plans to go to Utah to see a guy she was dating.
On July 14th, Esteban Flores made his way to Eureka, California, where Jodi was staying with her grandparents. There had been a huge development in the case, and he wanted to speak with her about it.
You see, the photos on the camera had been recovered, and what investigators saw shocked them.
Like we said last week, Jodi and Travis spent some time taking sexual photos of one another. This included the photo of Travis in the shower right before he was murdered. This, along with the statements from their friends, was enough to implicate Jodi as their top suspect.
On July 15th, Jodi was interviewed. These videos are available online, and they're honestly fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
He says to her, I know when this happened. I am looking for answers. I believe you know some of these details, and I think you can help us.
Jodi simply replies with, I would love to help you in any way I can.
He asked about her alibi. She told him about how she got lost, and he didn't buy it. During this entire time, Jodi didn't appear worried whatsoever.
He saw the holes in her story and pointed out there was a total of 18 hours that she could not account for. He then told her that her blood and her hair had been found at the scene.
Flores said he knew that she was at the house and that they had had sex. He then told her about the pictures. He said he could show her the pictures, to which she replied,
I mean, I am curious.
He showed her the photos of Travis and then a nude photo of herself, saying,
That's you. That's all of you.
To which she replied,
That looks like me.
He then asked her if she was going to continue with her story or tell the truth. She said,
Those pictures are, I don't know, to me, pictures are very compelling. I know they can be modified. I know they can be altered. And date and timestamps, I don't know. But I think they can be tampered with.
He then shows her another photo, one that had been taken by accident. It shows her foot next to Travis's bloody body. She attempted to deny it, but you could see her pants, and it was clearly her.
She refuses to budge. He then arrests her officially. Jodi then says, while crying,
This is a really trivial question, and it's going to reveal how shallow I am. But before they book me, can I clean myself up a little bit?
she was told no. And I'm really glad she was told no.
Me too.
And she was left alone. Jodi then stops crying, walks to the wall, and does a handstand. She then sits back down and begins to sing Oh Holy Night.
If I didn't see this on video, I wouldn't believe it. She's literally like,
so wacky.
She's slouched over the chair and she's like crying while he's talking to her. And then he leaves and she goes, and she like kind of cleans herself up, wipes away the tears, quote unquote tears. And then she walks over to the wall and then she does a handstand. And then she goes back down and she sits in the chair and she just starts singing. She's singing a Christmas song in the middle of summer, by the way.
This is the worst attempt at like an insanity plea, basically. Or like, what are you doing? Is your brain just like glitching out and it's doing the most comforting things to you? Like, I don't know.
It's interesting that you say that because at no point does she say any of this has to do with her mental health. She does not claim insanity. She doesn't say that. The only thing that she says really about herself is that she has a bad memory. But there's nothing that she does afterwards that makes it seem like this was a ploy for her being insane. She's literally just, I honestly think, so disconnected that she just like is like, well, you know, a handstand would be a good idea right now.
Maybe she thought acting quote unquote casual, although this is the same level of casual as when someone's like, act casual, I'm taking a picture, and everyone suddenly forgets how to be a human being.
Right? Yeah.
It's like, were you looking to impress someone? Were you like what was happening? I just don't know.
The singing, I think, I mean, I could be wrong, but to me, the singing strikes me as a form of self-soothing.
Yes, I would agree with that.
The handstand, I have no fucking idea.
I don't know.
I can't do a handstand, so I don't know when I would decide to whip one out, but I feel like it wouldn't be during this time.
No, probably not during an interrogation.
No.
Like in an interrogation room, rather. Of all the questions I have about this case, that part is the one I question the most.
Right, it's very much like a child just being like, look what I can do.
And obviously, we see her do it, so there's cameras in the room. Mm-hmm. Is it a point of she knows there's cameras in the room and she's like, oh, that detective is going to be watching me and he's going to think that's great? Like, I just don't
like you said, a lot of stuff about this case is very confusing. That is the biggest mystery when it comes to Jodi Arias. Why the fuck did she do a handstand?
And I mean, all that to say, When they took her mugshot, she immediately asked how her hair looked.
The mugshot is something else. Her head is kind of tilted to the side, and she has this big smile on her face. And it's very much like someone just wanted to take a nice picture of you. And you're like,
Yeah, she's got it. I mean, I would almost qualify it as like smirky almost. I think in her mind, even at this point, she's been arrested. I think she thinks she's going to get away with it.
Oh, absolutely. In one of the documentaries I watched, a reporter called it a glamour shot. And that's very much what this is. Because
Yes.
I think she knew people were going to see this photo. And
Mm,
she knew people were going to know who she was. And she was like, you know what? A lot of people are going to see this. It better look good.
it better be a banger. The following day, Jodi was interrogated again, but this time by a woman, and she doesn't say much to her. When offered the chance to talk to Flores, though, she takes it.
She would much rather talk to a man than a woman.
She tells Flores that she had been visiting Travis when a man and woman broke into the house and killed Travis. Their faces were covered, but she thought that they were white. After they killed him, she claimed she chickened out like a little bitch and ran into the closet to hide.
Those are her words.
Well, I mean, she is a little bitch, but that's not what happened.
And this is all while she's like sobbing.
So she says they held a gun to her head and she struggled a little. The intruders gave up and left her, but not before looking at her ID and saying they'd kill her if she told anyone. She showed Flores the cuts on her hands and claimed that this was from this interaction.
My favorite part about this whole interview is she's like, they took my ID and they looked at it and they were like, you were that bitch from California.
Flores must just be like, this bitch.
You can only see her face. You can see kind of the back of his
Yes,
head
yeah.
and the side of his face, but his body language, you can tell he's just like,
So unimpressed. He's just like, this is not what I wanted to deal with today. Jodi Arias.
Jodi then ran out to her car and drove to Salt Lake City. She didn't tell anyone what happened because she was scared. To all of this, Flores replied,
I've done this for a long time, and this is the most far-fetched story I've ever heard, and it's not going to help you. Is this how you want to leave this? Hell yeah, Flores.
Detective Flores is amazing. We talk so much about, police and detectives just like completely fumbling cases.
Dropping
but
the ball.
Yeah, this whole interrogation, he sees through her bullshit.
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
You know what? Over many, many cases, very much like this, ones we've covered and ones that we haven't, like you say, there are times when definitely the ball has been dropped by law enforcement. But every so often, there is a detective that comes along or a police officer that comes along that actually just does everything to the best of their ability. And you'll notice in quite a few of the big serial killer cases, certain detective names tend to come up again because of, serial killers being so rampant during certain eras, certain decades in certain areas. But yeah, once in a while, you get a good one.
Thank goodness.
Thank God.
He then tells her that she's been charged with first-degree murder. This is when Juan Martinez takes over, and he wanted to see Jodi punished for what she did.
The office decided that they would be seeking the death penalty. It was around this time that the story began to wind its way into the media.
The mugshot was seen all around the country, and the frenzy began. Jodi gave an interview on Inside Edition where she continued with the intruder story and said the words,
"No jury will convict me."
Her lawyer, Kirk Nurmi, absolutely hated this.
Yeah, not a good call,
He's
Jodi.
like, shut up. She wouldn't stop giving interviews to the press, and she comes across as very sweet, and many people would later say it looked like she was attempting to flirt her way to her innocence.
Well, based on the fact that she didn't like to be interviewed by a female officer but didn't mind the men at all, it wouldn't at all shock me if she really thought that was going to be her strategy.
Well, she's batting her eyelashes, she giggles, she smiles, she's playing with her hair. Like, it's very clear that that's what she's doing.
Wild.
At one point, she actually asked her defense lawyer to babysit her cat, and then she called him every single day.
Jesus Christ. And for the record, her defense knew that her intruder story was absolute bullshit. She then begins to accuse Travis of sexually assaulting her and claims that he was a pedophile. She eventually drops the intruder story and begins to say that she killed Travis in self-defense.
The trial itself began in January of 2013, 5 years after the murder. There were countless people lined up in hopes to see Jodi. People even traveled from all across the country in hopes that they would just get a glimpse of her.
You see videos of this, and it's like they're waiting to see a celebrity.
During the trial, the prosecution focused on the violence inflicted upon Travis and how she struck when he was essentially defenseless. They also focused on her many, many lies.
The defense attempted to convince the jury that Jodi did all of this as a battered woman. As they spoke, Jodi softly cried. They then spent their time breaking down Travis's character and talking about how terrible he was. They then said Jodi had been taking pictures of him in the shower when she dropped the camera. He then attacked her and threatened to kill her. She had to end his life to save hers.
Many of his friends, including Mimi, were called to testify. They all said that he was respectful and a good man. They also talked about Jodi's various stalker-like behaviors. Jurors had a hard time believing that the unsuspecting Jodi could be capable of such things.
They then called up the medical examiner and showed the autopsy photos. Jodi kept her head down the entire time. They focused on the many defensive wounds that Travis had. They talked about the gunshot wound and brought up the exact kind of gun that had been stolen from Jodi's grandparents' house.
The defense continued to try to paint Travis as sex-crazed and a potentially violent man. Eventually, it was time for Jodi to take the stand. This was something everyone had been hoping for.
We have talked about this so many times. This is never a good idea. It is not a good
No.
idea to represent yourself, and it's not a good idea to take the stand like this.
Jodi again claimed that she killed Travis because he attacked her. She also said that Travis anally assaulted her on numerous occasions, including the day of her baptism. Their emails and text messages were read, and they were incredibly sexual. Jodi appeared humiliated in talking about this and claimed that she never wanted to participate in sexual acts with him and that Travis was incredibly cruel to her. This included calling her a whore, slut, and now famously a three-hole wonder.
Ugh, deeply hate
Which
that.
he did. He did say those things to her.
Ugh.
She also claimed that she once walked in on him watching child pornography.
This obviously devastated his friends and family. The defense then revealed the phone sex call. And again, this was incredibly X-rated. Travis told her what he wanted to do to her, and she stated, "I like it," and said that she loved the ideas that he had.
Overall, Jodi was questioned over the course of 18 days.
Oh, that's so rough.
And the media loved it. Again, Nancy Grace.
Oh,
Ooh,
yes,
she
that
was having
woman.
a heyday.
Yes.
When it was time for Juan Martinez to question her, he was ruthless. She spoke about her supposed problems with her memory, and she would often say she had gone into a fog when she couldn't answer certain questions.
Her diary was used by the prosecution. In it, she constantly wrote about Travis, but never once mentioned the abuse. When they talked about the night he was killed, Jodi began to break down. They made her look at his photos again.
He pointed out all of the stab wounds Travis had on his back and questioned how someone can be a threat to you as you stab them when they're turned around, which essentially shattered the entire self-defense case.
As the jury deliberated, many people weighed in on what they thought should happen to Jodi. Even Donald Trump himself stated that he thought the decision would be reached quickly and that he could tell jurors did not agree with each other.
The issue was whether or not Jodi had premeditated the murder. On May 18th, 2013, they reached a verdict. Jodi Arias was found guilty of first-degree murder.
Gasps were heard throughout the courtroom. Jodi appeared shocked and began to cry as she looked at the jurors. After the trial, large crowds cheered outside. Jodi gave an interview shortly after.
And this was before the sentencing. She told cameras that she went blank after hearing the news and that she felt overwhelmed. She also said that she would rather get death than a life sentence. Prior to sentencing, the court heard from friends and family of Travis. They spoke about what he meant to them and what his loss had been like.
I don't think for a single second she would rather get death than life.
It was,
Not 1
yeah,
second.
it was interesting that she said that. Like, she very openly was like, I would much rather have the death penalty than serve a life sentence.
I wonder if that was another attempt to garner sympathy, to be like, I'm so heartbroken. Like, I don't want to live my life like this. Just kill me. Do you know what I mean?
Well, that's what
Like,
she said at one point. She was like, a life sentence would just be suicide.
okay, well, either way, I mean,
Yeah.
one is just going to take a little longer than the other. That's all. It was then time for Jodi to speak again. She told the court it was never her intention to malign Travis's character and that she designed a t-shirt saying survivor and that she wanted to help victims of domestic violence.
This is wild. She's talking and she's like, I never wanted to say anything bad about him. And I've designed this t-shirt. And then she holds up this, it just says like survivor in purple writing. And I'm going to donate the profits to domestic violence victims. And you can see like his friends and family, because it shows them a lot. They're just like the rage in their eyes. They're just like, what the fuck?
No
like, can you get worse?
Oh my God.
Jodi then begged for her life, saying that the death penalty would hurt her family.
Oh, so how the tables turn.
Yeah.
3 days later, 8 jurors voted for death and 4 for life. A mistrial was declared. A year and a half later, a different jury heard the case. This time, it was 11 for death and 1 for life. Under Arizona law, there can only be 2 attempts at death, and due to this, Jodi was sentenced to life in prison. Hilarious to me that they're like, mistrial, try it again. Mm-hmm. And then the second time, more of them wanted
more
to put
people
her to
are
death.
like, kill the bitch.
Oh my God.
Jodi was taken to the Perryville prison for women in Phoenix. There are many people who believe in her innocence and support her.
In 2020, she lost an appeal and her life sentence was upheld. By many accounts, she has been able to charm her way through prison. Other inmates have stated that she gets things other people don't, and that she's been seen flirting with guards and inmates alike.
And speaking of, her flirtation with guards has caused many of those in prison with her to dislike her.
I can imagine. She works as a library aide, and her paintings are sold online, some for as much as $2,500. There are reports that she attempted to marry a man she was dating, but was denied after she lost contact privileges in 2016 for calling a guard a cockblocker.
All in all, it seems like she's doing just fine.
That's so funny. She calls him a cockblocker and he's like, okay, I'll be a cockblocker. Boom, you don't get to see your boyfriend no more.
Well, the whole reason why she wanted to marry this guy was so she could have conjugal visits.
Oh my
And so
God.
she calls this guy a cockblocker and then he's like,
fine.
Bet.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll live up to it. Yep. What do I care? And that brings us to the very end of our series on Jodi Arias.
What a bitch.
What a woman. And not in a fucking good way.
Oh my God. Audacity is the word that comes to mind.
Yeah. You know, I think you're right when you said that she thought she was a lot smarter than she actually was. Mm-hmm. That is often the case, for sure. I think right up to the point where they said, we see you guilty of first-degree murder, I really thought she was going to bat her eyelashes and like just get away with it. Like, I think that's what she thought.
When she gets sentenced, or when she gets the guilty verdict, she kind of like, her face scrunches a little bit, and then you can see her looking at the jurors, and it's almost like she's looking at them with like a, how could you do this kind of look, like, really, serious? You guys?
Yeah, like, girl, you viciously murdered a man. There's only so much batting your eyelashes and being cutesy can do. She was not cutesy. She was not demure.
Not very mindful. But the thing is, when you watch the whole trial, and I didn't watch all of it because it was very long, but I watched a big chunk of it. And you see interviews with the jurors afterwards, and quite a few of them were, up until almost the very, very end, they were like, I just can't see her doing this. Whoa. And then once the evidence, because the person that really saved this case was Juan Martinez.
Oh yeah, he went in for her.
And he was vicious. Because one of the things that's interesting is when he's questioning her, the whole time she's very like meek, she's quiet, she's very
Mhm.
sweet, but when he starts to question her, she challenges him back, and you can really start to
Oh.
see like, hey, wait, this isn't the girl that we've seen this whole time. Like something's a little
Mhm.
different about you when you're challenged, and that kind of breaks that image.
Right, and I mean, like we said, he saw through it pretty freaking
Yeah.
quickly. You know what, to be honest, I think probably on his drive out to see her at her grandparents', he already had in his mind, "This is her." Like, I've talked to the friends, we've seen what we've seen, we've already kind of caught her in lies. He's really just going to confirm his suspicions at this point.
It's interesting because Juan Martinez, he still has a very good career.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Kirk Nurmi,
Mhm.
he actually does not practice law anymore.
And that was her lawyer, correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
and one of the reasons why he doesn't practice law was because of this case.
I believe it. I mean, if anything's gonna get you canceled, representing Jodi Arias is probably gonna do it.
Yeah, and I mean, he did have a job to do.
Oh,
You
for
know, he
sure.
didn't
Yeah.
choose, you don't like raise your hand and be like, I want to represent
Yeah.
Jodi Arias. But the way that they tried to paint Travis Alexander, I think really didn't do them
Sealed the
any
deal.
favors.
Yeah.
And again, he wasn't perfect.
No, absolutely not. Their relationship was a toxic one.
It was. And he did do a lot of stuff wrong. But when they brought in the accusations of pedophilia, which his comment about sounding like a 12-year-old girl having her first orgasm did not help,
No, for sure.
but there was no evidence that he had ever assaulted a child. There was no evidence that, I think it was just like an age play kind of thing between the two of
Something,
them.
yeah, and then that word just
Yeah,
started getting thrown around, and of course they're
exactly.
gonna
But
run with it.
them saying like, oh, she saw him looking at child pornography and this and that. There is one person that you see during the trial, and it's a man who's around Travis's age. I don't know if it's a friend of his or a
Mhm.
brother,
Okay.
but the scowl that he has on his face the entire time,
Whoa.
this man is fuming because he's seeing someone, because again, that's terrible to say about anybody.
Yo, yes,
But
absolutely.
a Mormon, when sex is something that you don't talk
Mhm.
about, and taking away all of the like really, really bad stuff, just the stuff that they shared about the text messages and the accusations about him sexually assaulting her,
Oh,
all of that. Like,
that
that's
alone,
terrible.
to lose anybody from your family or friends in that way, to lose a friend or a family member to murder. Like,
Yeah.
no one wants this at all.
Mhm.
And then not only that, is to have his reputation and dignity
Mhm.
dragged through the mud, and the poor man is dead. He can't defend
No.
himself. And then, like you say, the added fact that on top of it, he's from a very devout religious community. My God, like, this Jodi Arias fucked this poor man up in
Yeah.
every way she possibly could have.
And they had ex-girlfriends of his testify, some of whom were, well, most of whom were devout Mormons as well.
Mhm.
And they tried to, ask, like, did he ever come across, like, did he ever hurt you? Did he ever do this? Did he ever do that? And all that they really had to say was he was horny,
Yeah,
but
he
he didn't
wasn't the
hurt
best
anybody.
boyfriend, but he wasn't hurting
Yeah,
anyone.
exactly. It's this whole case, and again, we don't normally talk about the trial, especially not for like a full episode, basically, but this trial was something else. It truly was, and it's fascinating to see it unfold. I can see why people were so captivated by it,
Oh, for
because
sure.
you can't make this shit up.
No, and she was a wild card all by herself, and then
Mhm.
by the time you get the media frenzy around a prolific trial like this, you are just catapulting her into a level of fame, well, infamy, let's be real.
Yes, and they said that what really made this so infamous was the combination of two things that normally aren't combined, which is religion and sex.
Yeah, I feel like those two things tend not to go well together.
And with that, you have a story that they're gonna wanna know everything about it.
Yep, absolutely, it's captivating.
All right, Jodi Arias.
Dunzo.
Bye.
Rot in prison.
Yeah, I sure hope so. So far, again, the appeals aren't going well, and I hope it stays that way, despite the fact that she has $105,000 raised for her with people's hard-earned money.
Don't do that, you guys.
Don't spend your money on that. It's like Wade Wilson. Like, throw your money in the garbage. It's whatever.
I would rather you did that.
So a couple things. September 15th, 2 p.m. MST, like we said, we will be live on Twitch.
Yeah.
Twitch.tv/The Grim Curriculum. Go shoot us a follow.
Yeah, we're gonna do some, I don't know, Sunday afternoon shenanigans.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
It is that time of the episode where we are going to thank our Patreon VIPs. Check us out on Patreon. There is a free tier if you want early episode reveals. We also have a Discord, ton of behind the scenes stuff and extra content. But with that being said, a huge thank you to Atlantean Jedi, Bob, Brian, Hillary, Judy, Kevinus Musicus, Nova, Lisa, Steven Centauri, and Mayhem Mudkip.
Thank you. Y'all are the Titty City, the bomb.com, the cat's pajamas. Y'all are the best. And thank you to everybody else across the social medias. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter. I'm still not calling it X. Get the fuck out of here.
No way. We're on TikTok
we
too.
Are.
I want to get to 1,000 people on TikTok so we can stream on there for some funsies. That'd be cool.
Yeah, we post clips of the show, mainly the videos. So if you're not following us on Patreon or you're not subscribed to that tier, you can catch little clips of us on YouTube Shorts and also TikTok as well.
And Instagram Reels.
Oh, yeah,
and
Reels.
Twitter. They're everywhere.
Yeah,
Just
basically,
check it out.
yeah.
Show some love.
You'll see us.
Thank you all so much for listening. This has been
The Grim Curriculum.
I have a fun fact.
Yay.
During World War II, a Great Dane named Juliana was awarded the Blue Cross Medal. She extinguished a bomb by peeing on it.
Amazing. Yay.
Good puppy.
Hero puppy.
Yeah. Bye.